What does your inner child have to do with your fascia and your reactions to fascia release? You might be surprised at the connection between these two things. So this is what I'm going to be talking about in this video. And my personal opinion here is that we all have degrees of unhealed trauma. But this video in particular is for those of you that are looking to heal trauma through your body, looking to do body-based approaches to moving trauma and stuck emotions and energy out of your body. But I believe this can benefit everybody, especially if you're here on my channel doing fascia release to get out of pain or optimize. If you want to become more self-aware and more conscious of how you're inhabiting your body and your life, then this video is for you. We're going to be talking about those reactions to fascia release and what they actually mean about you and your inner child. My name is Alicia Celeste, and welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel. If you're new here, well, first of all, welcome. And secondly, make sure to check out some of the other videos that I have about how to heal trauma through the body if that's what brought you here. I'll link to the top two that I recommend in the description box below, but a really great place to start would be how to release trapped emotions that are stuck in your body. Okay, so first of all, a lot of us tend to think about our body as separate from us. We just happen to inhabit this meat suit, this package of muscle and bone, and it often does things to us that we don't like. It gives us pain, it gives us indigestion, it gives us anxiety, it creates all these feelings that we really don't like, right? And a lot of the time we end up using something like fascia release to try to get rid of those feelings we don't like. But we forget that what's actually in here, what's living in here, creating those feelings we don't like, is us. You live in your body. You animate your body. You are co-creating your experience in every moment of what is actually happening in your body and how you feel on a moment-to-moment basis. So when you do something like fascia release, you're actually contacting or meeting yourself. It's going to be everything from what is conscious, and if you're somewhat self-aware, you're going to know things about yourself already that won't surprise you when you begin working with your body. But if you're not very self-aware, if you're not conscious, if there's a lot living in your subconscious, which lives in your body, that it may feel really shocking, it may be surprising, it may feel scary at what you begin to find when you enter your body, when you do something like fascia release, because fascia release is very visceral. It produces typically a lot of sensation. But I want to take this opportunity in this video to describe a spectrum of reactions that include not feeling a whole lot at all. So usually you might not think that that's a reaction to fascia release, is to feel nothing. Because it's kind of anticlimactic. It's not a big reaction. It's not fighting it. It's not getting sore. But there is a spectrum of reactivity that I think it's really helpful to find yourself. Like, where are you on this spectrum? And it could change day to day. It could change moment to moment. So this is what I really want to dive into, and then I'm going to circle back around to this whole idea of the inner child and what the heck this has to do with your reactivity to fascia release. So when we look at the whole spectrum here, we're going to find in the middle the ideal, our ideal, way of being, way of inhabiting our body on a daily basis or a moment-to-moment basis. Now, this means being present, being conscious, being objective, being able to feel what you feel without being swept away by your feelings or being in reaction to them in any way. And, I'm going to go ahead and say that if you are in the middle 100% of the time in every day, then you probably don't need to exist on this planet anymore, because you've become Buddha. So most of us are not going to find ourselves in the middle in every moment of every day, let alone maybe every day, right? So we're going to kind of exist on this spectrum, swinging back and forth, or maybe we tend towards one side more than the other. So on one side of the spectrum, moving towards the pole, the end of the spectrum, we have being sensitive. So if you've ever found yourself telling yourself, gosh, you're so sensitive, or if other people have told you you're so sensitive, that might be where you're at. So what this means is it doesn't take a lot of stimulus or trigger to get a reaction out of you, for you to feel something and then kind of react to what you're feeling. And then if we move further along the spectrum in this, on this side, we're going to find being flooded. So this means you go from being sensitive to being totally overwhelmed by how much you're feeling, that you can't remain present for. Because if you were present for it, you would be in the middle, right? So what this typically is going to manifest as, in my experience, is that if you're all the way on that end of the spectrum, you're going to have, a lot of anxiety or tend towards panic attacks. And then the ultimate way to get out of this loop, because it is so uncomfortable, is dissociation. So if you go all the way to flooded, you may end up then dissociating or leaving your body, because you just can't remain present to feeling what you feel. So that's one end of the spectrum. And then to the other end of the spectrum, we have moving away from the middle, or being present and objective. We have being tough, being strong. Maybe you've boasted that you have a high pain tolerance. And if this is you, that's not a great thing, actually. That's not something I think we should really boast about, because what it actually means is that you have the ability to not feel a lot, which means, guess what? You're going to need more stimulus, a more painful trigger to get your attention, to get you to feel something. And so if you've ever had to have life just whack you upside the head to get your attention, right, before you start paying attention to your body or your relationships or anything else, then this is probably you. And I relate. And then moving all the way to the end of this side of the spectrum, we have going from, being tough and strong and enduring and having a high pain tolerance to numb. So now you're not feeling much of anything. And even a really big stimulus isn't enough to make you feel something. So you may be numb physically, you might be numb emotionally, and typically these things go together. So that is the spectrum, simplified, oversimplified. I want you to understand there are so many nuances to how we each are going to experience where we are on the spectrum, right? It's not like you're either plunked in the middle between present and numb, or present and flooded. You're probably going to be somewhere in between. And then you are going to have your own flavor of the subtle patterns that exist in you to protect yourself, right? And to kind of adapt and maneuver and pretzel yourself into whatever modes of thinking, feeling, and behavior you feel like you have to do, usually at a subconscious level, to survive life. Now, before we talk about where your reactions came from and what you can do about them, because the goal really is to change those reactive patterns, right? That's probably why you're here, to have a different experience in your body and your life, to heal injuries or heal trauma. But before we dive into that, I want to just ask if you're brave enough to identify where you think you are on the spectrum today, because it might change tomorrow, and some people might actually loop between the two. Like, you might go from feeling numb and not feeling much of anything at all to maybe, flooded in a moment, and then you dissociate, and you might loop between the two. But if you're willing to share that in the comment section below, I would be so grateful, because it is going to help other people. We have a tendency to think we're alone, we're defective, that we're the only one that feels the way we do in the particular way that we do. Or we feel, we kind of look at other people out there in the world and we probably project onto them this idea that they have this middle, right? They have their life together, they have their relationships together, they have the perfect existence that they display on social media. We look out and we project normal and, everything we're not onto other people, and then we think we're broken. So this is the furthest thing from truth. In my experience, we're all on the spectrum. And like I said, if anyone claims to be in the middle all the time, then they should be Buddha, right? And maybe they don't even need to be here on this planet anymore. So share that in the comment section below if you're willing. We're not alone, and there's no shame in naming where you're at on any, segment of this spectrum. the goal, if you're here, is to become conscious of this so you can do something about it, so you can heal and have a different experience. So let's talk about that now. First of all, where did these patterns come from? Well, this has to do with the inner child. When we were young, all of us, I believe, growing up, created patterns of self-protection to adapt to the circumstances we grew up in our family, in our social circles, in our literal physical environment, maybe. And very few of us, again, probably none of us living today were totally present, objective, feeling fully without getting swept away or reacting to what we were feeling 100% of the time. So unless that's you and you were a Buddha and you were born in the middle and you stayed in the middle, you're gonna have some form of self-protection patterns living in your nervous system. Literally, they are memorized patterns that exist in your body, in your nervous system, that dictate what you're supposed to do if you encounter familiar triggers. And those familiar triggers are pain, painful feelings of emotion, painful feelings of sensation in your body. So how you react to something painful or a stimulus can be informative to you of where you're at on the spectrum today. And then knowing that the goal is to actually get closer and closer and hopefully to the middle more often than not, you can begin to change, hopefully, how you're reacting. You can respond instead of react. But first, the goal is to actually just become conscious of it. So our wounded inner child is here inside all of us until we become conscious of what's unconscious inside of us. That wounded inner child has all kinds of patterns of self-protection. We don't just have one. We may have one dominant form of self-protection, but typically it's going to come in a form of a reaction. So instead of remaining calm and present and objective, if we're triggered by something familiar, we have now activated our inner child. So if you're reacting to fascia release and you're not just present and feeling it all and objective, you're meeting your inner child. Your inner child has been activated, and it's an amazing opportunity to say hello to that part of you and to observe how you're actually meeting that part of you. Okay, so now that you understand a little more of what's happening here, if you're reactive to fascia release in any way other than being present and feeling what you feel, that you are meeting some unhealed part of you, that wounded inner child that's still carrying around self-protective patterns. Those patterns are designed to protect you from feeling anything uncomfortable. So what do you do about it? Well, the very first step here, I recommend using fascia release. It's an amazing tool to inform you of where you're at today, right? Where am I at today with my ability to feel? Where am I at with my ability to be present to myself and my body, my feelings? And then the goal is really to become conscious of how you meet yourself in feelings. I would say that is the most important first step before even trying to change anything, is to simply become aware of your relationship to your inner child, your relationship to your feelings. How do you greet your feelings? Because feelings exist on a spectrum too, right? There are the ones that are pleasurable, and there are the ones that are not. They're painful, they're uncomfortable, they hurt. How are you meeting those spectrum of feelings, right, that live in your body, that you experience through your body? Are you meeting them with curiosity? Are you meeting them with playfulness, with a warm embrace, with love, with compassion? Are you meeting your inner child with love, with compassion, with a warm embrace? Or are you meeting yourself with indifference, with apathy, with anger, with frustration, with resentment? So noticing how you are meeting this part of yourself, your feeling life and your inner child, is the first step, in my opinion, of any healing journey, especially when it comes to healing trauma and trauma that's stuck in the body. Because the goal is to integrate that inner child, to let those feelings exist and let them be okay, and to move more and more towards presence. But to be able to do that, you have to take your inner child along for the journey. And if you and your inner child are in conflict, or, you know, if you are not welcoming and embracing what you find in your body, in your feelings as that inner child, it's going to be challenging to create a healthy relationship between you two where you can become an integrated adult. So obviously this is a really big topic, and this practice I'm talking about isn't a cure-all. But this is one of the most important things we can do for ourselves, is to get self-awareness of where we are today in our relationship to our inner child, in our relationship to feelings, and then beginning to identify the patterns that are at play, that are present, preventing us from actually getting to that middle point to feel what we feel objectively, without getting swept to either side of the spectrum. If you happen to be new here and you've never really done fascia release before, or you've never used it for this purpose, I'm going to link to a few videos in the description box below this video that I think would be great fascia release techniques to start with. Typically, I'm going to recommend quads or calves, but any fascia release technique is going to work. I mean, nooks and crannies, getting into the deltoids, the biceps, the chest, all of it is good. The point is, you're not releasing fascia per se, you're having a conversation with your body, you're feeling what you feel there, and you're using fascia release for a self-awareness practice, for a healing practice to move things out of your body. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'd love to hear any insights or takeaways you have from this video in the comment section below. I love hearing from you, and it inspires me to create more videos like this. So thank you again, and I'll see you next time. It's in it through the body.